Okay, so time after time we show about deckling, and I've sort of done it together, so we've skipped that actual section about putting the decals on. Needless to say, they went down really well. To be honest, Revell's decals aren't as bad as they used to be. Back in the day, they were pretty horrible. They used to be very thick, extremely flat, and really just give you no end of troubles, especially if you're going over a flat type finish. Now for us, we wanted it to be quite flat on the bottom. We didn't want a high gloss, because otherwise that's going to cause us loads of trouble, and with the rest of the body, because we've got things in mind about weathering this thing in and giving it an overall worn down look. So that's what we wanted to start with. So there's no point having gloss, because otherwise you've got to work your way down through all those coats and everything else. So we just went straight on. Obviously the underside did have a quick coat, as we know, of clear, but that was a very flat coat, and you can see it's not exactly glossy. Now, a lot of people often say to me about weathering in decals. How do you get them in there? How do you get rid of like carrier film when it's horrible and everything else like that? And traditionally, trying to show you on something like this is a bit difficult, because you can't really see any problems with it down here. I have actually got a little bit of silvering on it, but you have to really look for it, okay? But when you're doing black, as you can see under here, you can see it stands out like the proverbial barn door. Okay, so actually, as you can see, it's not too much of a problem. I've got a couple of little silvery spots down here. You can probably see we have one just here and we one there, but actually they've gone down pretty darn well, and that was just using our usual way of using a little bit of microsol. Okay, but how do you weather that actual down to get it more and worn and everything else? Okay, there's a couple of options to that. First of all is the enamel trick. Okay, now make sure it's enamel. Make sure for the life of you it's not lacquers. If you put lacquers near this, you're going to be back down to plastic before you can think. Okay, and you're going to ruin your decal. It'll physically just melt it away and everything else. Enamel thinners, that is very much not going to affect the paint, because the paint is actually an acrylic, so enamels won't touch it. And obviously the decal, very rare it gets affected and everything else like that. Now, you've probably seen me in the past, some decal manufacturers, their decals work really well with enamel thinners, and you can actually eat the carrier film away and just leave the colour behind. Linden Hill decals, I think the only ones it's ever really worked for me properly. But there's another little trick you can do, and to wear down and sort of blend in and everything else. Because obviously as well, we've got down here, this decal is a little bit sharp, isn't it? And it's a little bit too clean. So, first of all, what do? I grab if we will just start fresh, because to be honest, I've already done the other side, and I'll show you that in a moment. Okay, so we've got cotton bud, just a normal one here. So we go into our little bit of enamels. Now you don't need gallons of this, don't be chucking this around, tons of it, okay? But all you do, you just come up and you just gently rub this in. Okay, now this isn't going to, and I know for a fact, 'cause I've tried it with Revell decals before, do anything to the actual decal. Okay, it's not going to eat through the actual carrier film and all the rest of it, but what it is going to do is soften it slightly. Okay, and by softening it, what it enables it to do is actually start to tear and peel away, being quite nice. Okay, so all you do, you're just massaging it all in. Okay, just like this. All right, then you want to come in with a stick. Now obviously you don't want to use anything that's got too much bite, okay? You don't want to use something perhaps like the green one thinking that'll work, because obviously that's too smooth. It's not going to do really anything, okay, at all. So you need something that's a little bit worn down and isn't going to affect too much. And to be honest, I've got down here one of my old sponges that I use, okay? It's nice and worn and everything else, all right? So what we're going to do to start with, just lightly going to rub this on the top. Now what this will do is pop all those decals and everything else, and all those bubbles, because it's going to rip open the top of them. Okay, so to start with, we just very lightly start to work our way round, and then we're just going to sand very lightly the entire thing and the paintwork around it. Now it's important to do the paintwork around it, because as you start to make your way round, you're actually going to pull some of that paint up. You see it getting black on the edge, and it's going to put it onto the white. Okay, and then all we're going to do is just keep sanding, and what we're going to do is sand through that carrier film that's all over this, and we're going to end up down, well, hopefully, to just the actual white itself. Okay, so we're just going to take our time, and we're just running our way down very lightly all the way through this. Okay, and this is all you do. You just keep going at it until you're running down. Don't, as you can see there, we've just got a little bit too close to the edge. Get close to edges, because otherwise you're going to sand straight through them, all right? And then again, we just re-soak this in, and we're going to go over And we're going to soften the decal. And all this is going to do is soften it slightly. And because it softens it, it enables it to sand and dig into it. Okay, and you can do it all like that. Okay, so that's it. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to switch over to this guy because it's got a little bit more bite on it. Okay, and you're just going to start to gently, and again, remember with the sanding technique, as in do not push down, just let the sander rock across the surface. Okay, and as annoying as that squeak is, let me just get rid of that squeak because that's doing my proverbial head in. Okay, so you're just going to keep going down until you can feel it go through, and I'm getting little tiny wispy bits coming off of this now, and that's actually that carrier film physically coming away now. So we know we're down into the paint, and we're getting a little bit of black coming through, so we don't want to go any closer there. So we're just going to move around, and so we've got these little wispy bits happening, and this is how we do it. Okay, so we're just moving off to this area, and now what I'm going to start to do is actually start to wear on the white as well, because we want to knock that back. So I'm now physically sanding the white just to take the edge. You see, we just took a little tiny edge out of it, and then obviously we can keep going. You can see we're just wearing that corner out of it. And then when you know what you're doing, you're getting a bit of a feel for this, you can start to maneuver around it just a little bit more. Okay. You can start to just chew in to that decal. Alright, so you can see it in there now. Just give it a light sand right over everywhere. Okay, come back in with a little bit more of the enamels. And give it a rub, and what happens is some of the actual, you can see we're just starting to wear into the paintwork a little bit, but you can then start to peck away at some of this stuff as well, because you've got little scratches and little digs in it. Okay, and it is just a case of just wearing in the decal just a little bit. So we've got no carrier film now at all on this, I don't think. There's a little bit towards that edge. That side's fine, that side's okay. It's a little bit here, and when you catch it across the light you can see the carrier film, and then the way you can just rub at it lightly, and then again you can come in with your and just dig a little bit, and this is how we get rid of it all. Okay. So again, we're just avoiding that middle area. Okay, and as you can see, you can start to wear it all down like that. And to be honest, I've already been doing it over on this guy, and you can see we've gone a little bit too much here, and we've just started to make our way through there, but we have no carrier film left, and you can see we've got nice little chips out of it and everything else. And again, when you wet this guy all down, you can see, get a better look at it. You can see exactly what we've done to it, just worn it down. Now we're going to come in and we can just touch that in a tiny bit, but to be honest, do you want to? It's looking pretty good, and all the rest of it as you make your way around. Okay, so from that point of view, that is how we get rid of the carrier film and just sand it gently away by coming in with some skinnies, okay, and just literally going in there and taking them out. And then that way we don't need a problem with silvering because there's nothing to silver. Okay, so it just takes a little bit of time and wear, but if you do go through like there just a little bit too much, I'm not going to worry about it because I'm going to do it to quite a lot of this underneath anyway. It's going to have a lot of worn spots, things like that down in here. So from our point of view, it's all good. Okay, so in a moment when we get the wash down on there and we start to sand it back, we're going to cause different motions and warm bits and polished areas and everything else like that by doing this exact same thing. But as you can see, that is how we go around, and that you will do exactly the same for everywhere. Things like numbering and that, I wouldn't worry too much about it, and obviously we've got a tiny little bit of silvering, as we know, just down in this guy, just down in here, maybe you want to take care of, but that's literally how I go about it. And then you can obviously come back in if you want to, and you go in with pigment, a little bit of post shading, whatever you do, just to knock those decals back and to take care of them. bottom. But it's a slow, very, very gentle process, and just literally working through. It might take you 10 minutes per decal to go round to get them all up, but sometimes it's nice just to fade them in just a little bit more than normal. All right, so that's just another little tip, another little tool in your arsenal, as I say, and when it starts to all wear in and everything else like that, we're going to have something very, very muted. So what I'm going to do now is lightly just going to go around and sand some of the decals just to make sure they're all in nice and tight on the top and stuff like that. Next up, we're going to put a wash onto this guy right the way over it. Usual thing, dark dirt wash, top and bottom, just to darken it all down and everything else like that. A little bit of grey work on the bottom just to make that pop a bit more. Sand all of that away, okay, and then we can go through the motions of actually post shading and stuff like that and really start to pop it all together as well. Bring all these bits in there to actually get them all joined in, so everything's sort of the same level of weathering no matter what it is, from a flat, from a slat to a cockpit to some of the covers and stuff like that, so everything's weathered the same. Okay, so decals down, happy that they're sealed down there. They're not going to go anywhere. I've sanded them all as well, just give them a little bit of a key over the top, and we're going to take our life in our hands and we're not going to overcoat. Under here, you might notice a little bit glossy, a little bit of black gloss paint left over, so I've just popped it around just to touch those in. Again, nothing heavy because we're going to sand it and all the rest of it, so again, it doesn't matter too much how we get in. Now, obviously, the underside, you could just use the dark dirt, you'll get a faint brown hinge to it, but you're not going to see much that's going on. So what we're going to do, a little bit of grey mixed in with the dark dirt, and then we're just going to do dark dirt exclusively on the top, all right? So, usual thing, we've got a little cup down on here. Just have a damn good shake up. To be honest, I'm almost out, weirdly enough. You think I would have gallons of it. I've actually dark dirt wash. So what we're going to do is just going to pour a little bit down into there, and then we will grab a little bit of this, and we're going to make basically around about 50-50 mix. Whoops, probably a little bit more. Okay, just in there like that. Then my brush, there it is, which has got I have a little sticker on mine, so I know this is just for washes. And then we're just going to mix these two up. So this should come up with a light dark dirt type colour. Okay. In fact, it may be a little bit too light. I'll tell you what, we're going to put it on. We'll see what happens. If it looks too light, then what we'll do is we'll come back off and we'll do something else. No, actually, I think that'll be alright. Okay, so usual thing, we're just going to brush this all over the black stuff. Doesn't matter if it goes on any other colour or anything else like that whatsoever. We just let it go in, let it all do its stuff. Don't forget, this Will Well cover on here is not going to be staying. It's just a temporary measure until all the paintwork and everything is done. Okay, so we're just going to brush all this under here, making sure we get absolutely everywhere with it. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll come off of this, and then we'll go over the top half with the dark dirt colour as well. And then what we'll do, we'll let all of that dry for a couple of hours, and then we can come back and we can rub it away. But what we're going to do, like for always, we're going to sand this off. We're not actually going to come in and we're going to wet tissue it off. We're actually going to sand this stuff away. Okay, so this one's not going to take too much around here. So join us in a minute. Usual thing, just brushing this liberally absolutely everywhere like this. Okay, and then when we come back, we'll talk about taking it off and the different ways of doing it. As I say, personally, we're just going to come in here and sand it away, but you might need a little bit of help in some areas, so a little bit of wet tissue never hurt anyone. But obviously doing it this way, if you've never used the wash before, you probably want to put down a satin finish at least onto your model, and then that way, if you've got any sticky bits that don't want to come away, you'll be fine. It'll just come away anyway with a wet tissue. When you're doing it over flat coats like this, it can be a little bit more of a handful to actually get all of these off. Okay, so we're just going to come around these areas just like that. All right, so we'll let that dry. Dark dirt onto the top, exactly the same. Let them dry and we'll come back together to get it all off. Okay, so the wash has been on, it's dried, and we're absolutely fine. Now, I've already taken half off, but we'll show you exactly what we've done down here. So, usual thing, You know the wash, you've seen me do this a million times before, we'll just recap. Now this hasn't had a protective coat at all, so what we're hoping is that the texture, the micro texture in the surface of the paint is going to grip slightly. Don't want to all get stuck on here, but it will grip slightly to the actual clay itself, and then that way you have to physically pull it away from the model. It's not like it just wipes away with ease, okay? So if we have a look down in here, so as you can see, we've got this wingtip, just this area here. So if we just use a dry cloth and we give it a rub, you can see we can take off some areas, but unfortunately we get the little spots all in there and stuff like that, okay? So what we need to do is literally moisten it just a little bit. So a quick dab with the tongue, knock it off, and then rub round here. So it's literally just moisture, okay? Then we just circle motions and we start to rub round. And what happens is, as we go, you can see these spots get smaller and smaller, and they'll disappear. And what happens is you will then start to load up with grime on the underside of your tissue as you make your way through, okay? So then we'll just do this back edge, and for the moment you just want to do circular motions to get most of it off. And when we say most of it, we don't want to take it all, okay? So we're just going to go along here. Now you might remember we didn't seal all these decals or anything else like that, so we're just hoping to go through. Now if you get a little spot and it's a bit stubborn, don't worry about it, we'll get rid of him in the next one, okay? And then we're just going to go down in here, and we're just going to rub. And again, a little bit sticky, okay, but you could use this grime to your advantage if you wanted to, but from our point of view, we're not really worried. So we're just going to, again, lightly moisten the back of the hand, okay? And for the moment, we're just going to wipe along this metal edge just to buff that up a little, because we want that to show. All right, and then we're just going to come into these areas where it's a little bit strong, and we're just going to rub them all down, okay, just like that. So I'm actually quite happy of how that entire area is, all right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to work our way down. So again, lightly moisten, and then lightly rub to start with, just to pick it all up and get it to move. But as you can see, at no point have we had any problems with the wash getting underneath the surface of these decals. We've got these walkway marks, these panels walking around on here, and as you can see, they are still absolutely fine, okay? And that is because they went down really nicely. So again, moistening lightly, and I'll pop around and do these a little bit nicer, okay, but around on these. All right, so that is the wing section. So on the body itself, we're just gonna carry that theme on. So again, light moist, very light rub to start with. And then what we want to do is create grime and texture into this. So you might notice it's looking really dirty and grimy, and that's what we want. And it's loading up on here, which is another nice touch. So when we start to rub away and stuff like that, nothing is going too much. It's going to leave a lot of this grime all in this paintwork and in this texture. Okay, so they've got these spots running down the bottom here. So we're just going to get rid of them. So we just give them a nice good rub. Take them away. And then again, we're just going to come in, take a little bit of this off, so a little bit of moisture. Okay, over to the clean side of the cloth, or a cleaner side, and a light rub. And again, you can see how you can take it through the different layers, and we can leave grime and texture all on this if we want, okay? Then this is where these guys come along. Now these are our sort of newish, okay, polishers. So what we're going to do is dry, just lightly rub. And what we're going to do is just going to key in the surface, and we're just going to slightly rub into it, just a little bit. And as you can see, we start to pick up dirt and grime and everything else like that. And actually what we can do, we can sand the wash away, but also we can start to etch into the surface of the mottling that we've put on here. Okay, so we can just get in, we can give it a bit of a sand over, take a little bit out, and at this moment we're not going to use the white side at all. And then again, we just pick up some of this, and we'll just give this a wipe, and as you can see, we can just take it down to whatever weathered state we would like. Okay. So, and as you can see, we've worn into the surface of the actual mottling as well, which we want to do. The other way as well, we're going to go over these wings, okay? So including the decal, we're just going to go over. Remember we said about these little troublesome little spots we had on this wing and stuff like that? What you can actually do now is come in with these and you can physically sand them off. Okay, you can take them off literally just like that. And then what you want to do, you can use your sander now and just lightly rub right the way over the entire wing. And what we're trying to do is, one, fade in just the little areas because we can go through layers of paint, but also we can actually polish this in some way. So I'm just doing centers of panels and over the actual marking itself, over the actual decal. Okay, and then we're just in here, it's a little bit strong, so we're going to sand that down. Okay, and we're just going to go over this like this, and then a nice polish everywhere. Okay, just over. So we're happy of how that wing is now, and that is it. Then what happens is, and hopefully we can see this, alright, you'll get a shine effect start to happen. Okay, so if we catch it in the light, you see how it's starting to pick it up, and then when you catch it in different angles, we can see it's really hard to show on camera, to be honest, because of the way the shine works. But as you can see, it's not shiny everywhere, but it has now got a little bit of a shine to that wing. But the thing is, when you're looking at it from this angle, it looks dead flat. Okay, and this is what we're trying to recreate, and we've done it over on this one already. Okay, so again, you can see you've got some flat areas, some shiny, just like this, and this is what I'm talking about, is just getting this area in. Now I haven't buffed this one in, but we did it on here. But if you look at the marking, you see how that, you can't see the carrier, because again we've buffed the decal down into the same surface. Okay, so this is what we're talking about, this decal just here, my thumb. You can see, you can't see the decal area. This one over here, if we catch it in the light again, you can sort of see it. So what we're going to do is going to attempt to take some of that out. So again, using your sanding stick, you're just going to grab it, and all we're going to do is lightly going to go over the surface. Okay, so we're just going to gently just go over, and what we're trying to do is just blend into the rest of the actual wing on here. Okay, in any areas like that, to be honest, a little strong spot, we're just going to buff that off, and we're going to buff that away, and we've got a little bit just down there, and a few others. Okay, and then some of that weathering we had, as we called it, this stuff, we can fade it back a little now, and we're just going to go over the actual decals themselves, and we're just going to fade some of those all in, so then hopefully you can see how that's blending in. You can still see it's a little bit stronger there, needs a little bit more time spent sanding on it, but hopefully you can get that overall effect of what we're trying to achieve by differences in the surface of actually having this, you know, going through the motions of it. Okay, so it looks quite shiny as you go through, which I think is a far more realistic look. And then you've got other areas, you see where they're quite muted. And this is the thing, if you use the white side, you can gloss it, but obviously we don't want to do that on this guy, because obviously we want it to be quite muted. So again, we're just going to pop round on some of these other areas, on the sides here, things like that. We can just wear this in a little bit, and we can wear down some of the mottling. And to be honest, we've done this right the way across this side already. Okay, just hook it all back and to get it going. This dirt that gets caught on your sanding stick gets transferred and pushed around, and again we've already done this side, and you can see how it's flattening back, okay, right the way down in there. So no problems with those again. And again, if you look at the marking here, it's obviously going to be a little bit, you could paint over it a bit, but it's down, it's in there, it's just amongst everything else as it makes its way through. And then again, on the underside, we've already taken it off with a damp cloth. Then you can come in with this guy, and what we can do, we can just lightly sand right the way over. Okay, and by sanding this guy in, we can actually make some very nice distressed type painting and polished type areas. Okay, and we can just go around like on here, and then down on the back here. Okay, here. And we're going with direction of airflow, obviously, because we're aircraft, okay? But you can leave this dust on here, or in a moment, as we'll do, we'll just wipe it away to give us a nicer look. And again, these guys down in here, if you want to, you can actually use it to your advantage. And as we'll do, we're just going to sand all of this in. You can see my riveting detail that I did down the back here. It should make this pop, because what's happening is I'm sanding very lightly over this riveting detail. So when we come in like here, okay, and again, as you can see, you can really go at this because it's not going down and in. Okay. So we can polish and buff away and give you any type of effect you need just underneath there, like that. Alright, so it is that thing of using these to go through, because they're not like a sander. You use this, you're going to go through the plastic. You use the white one, this one, the trouble is you're just going to polish it. Okay, you're actually going to polish the surface. This one's got a little bit more bite, and when it gets dirty on the end, you can either rub it on your trousers to clean it out a bit, which will work, and then you can just come back in. Okay. And you can go in and just make any type of weathering and dirt and grime, and you can obviously pick it up from one area and take it to the other. But again, what we're trying to do, if we just do down in here, polish this up a little bit more, we're trying to create shine on these areas. Okay, so again, we'll just give this a rub. Hopefully you can see on the bottom of this wing, you see how we've got these different shines and things going down on here, just like this. That's what we're trying to recreate. You can see how that decal has completely blended in to the surface, and it looks very, very worn. But this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to give it shine where there technically isn't any, because when you look at it like this, it's just flat, it's dead. When you start catching things on the light, you can see it's had a little bit of a polish here. You can see it just coming through a little bit. Okay, and this is how we're trying to work our weathering, just to give it that realistic look. And it is that thing, so when you look across it and you look at it from different angles and different areas and different lighting, it'll look different every single time. Alright, so I'm going to carry on now, whipping it all off everywhere else. So if I come up with anything interesting, I'll show you as well. But generally, like down on here, if I show you on this one, all we're going to do, you've got your round, your actual marking, as you can see. We're just going to come in. You can see if you just use this to sand through the dirt and the grime, you can see how it sort of pops through and comes through. And then again, you can just pop in. Okay, just being careful you don't go too far, because we don't want to actually sand it too much. Okay, and then if we just use a cloth here, you can see the type of area you got. So if I just wet this slightly and go over it even though it's wet. Okay, and then I'm just going to come in with this again, polishing down. You can see again we're getting this shine, this hue coming through that you tend to get. That's what we're trying to recreate. Okay, and that's it. Really, really simple. So what we're going to do, carry on, get the rest of this all off. Once it's all off, we can have a look, see exactly what we've got, and actually we can start putting a few bits on. So we put the slats on the front, we can get the flaps going in the back, and in fact we can then undo underneath here, and we can start getting the gear installed onto it, everything else like that. So then that way, when we come along with a little bit of post shading in a moment, everything is in place, so everything will get weathered at the same time.